right. Thank you for this nice introduction. It was actually 12 hours due to delays, so, well, let's see how it goes the way back. So we've seen a lot of talks here where we question our role and that we're kind of showing the ambiguity. I'll be bold here because I just have 10 minutes. So let me start with a bold claim of this talk, which is elevating the skill level in the company is the single most impactful thing you can do as a staff engineer. If you agree with this and wonder how, this talk will show you some tools and how to apply them and what to be aware of. I think yesterday we've already seen a lot of talks where this was touched. Sami and Guillaume talked about it, James talked about it, Glenn talked about it. This morning again we had in Majek's talk and the debugging these things. If this is too bold for you, let me still try to convince you that it might at least be partially true. So as a staff engineer, we heard it again here in this conference, you need to scale yourself, which is a big topic. I won't go into more detail than this here. An essential part is, of all the things that need to get done, you need to focus on the things that only you can do, which is this orange piece. However, if this piece is too big, you are a bottleneck. That's pretty much the essence of it. If this sounds familiar, it might. I have good news. This talk will show you a way out of it, which is reducing the number of things only you can do by increasing the things others can do, right? It's basically give someone a fish and you feed them for a day, teach someone to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. Or in our terms, write a technical design and the team writes good software for this project. Teach them to write technical designs and they actually write good software all the time. Well, most of the time. And if you teach fishing, so you raise the skill level of your colleagues and more colleagues over time, and then they again teach their colleagues, then eventually you spread this in the entire company and get it to a new level. For example, at Zalando, this is a great company. I'm there for 12 years now. And one reason is that the technical leaders there did not just raise the bar. They actually helped people reach that bar before they raised it again, right? It's no use to just create a gap. You need to actually close it. And this impact outlasts your stay in the company. And I would say with all the legacy talk we heard, it realistically outlasts the lifetime of most software that you actually built. So in the long run, it really is the most impactful thing you can do. Did I convince you? Maybe I did. Maybe you're still curious. Now the question is, how do we teach how to fish, right? I want to mention 4 tools of growth that focus on the skill level. We heard about sharing knowledge, but it's also about sharing skills and techniques. The important part with all of them is you need to know your colleagues. So actually a fellow engineering manager, Stefan, shout out, said, make sure that you mention this. Knowing the objectives of your peers and their skills and the characters, not just for the managers to develop them. You need to know this and have an opinion to apply the right tools and create the right growth opportunities, right? Okay, leading by example. Sounds like you just do your job and that's it. Well, there's more to it, obviously. Your colleagues have to be able to see what you're doing. This is clear. But the more interesting thing is your colleagues, this like works as a learning opportunity only if your colleagues generally are already able to do it. Example from my daughters. They are doing gymnastics. They've been doing it for years, and I watched them doing it for years. What's your bet? Can I already do a backflip? I can't, I tell you, and nobody's surprised by this because watching them doing it doesn't actually teach me anything if it's too difficult, right? So the task has to fit the skill level and they have to be able to do it. Now, leading by example is a lot of effort for you. And if you recall the orange piece, it's at the edge or outside of this piece. It's not something that you generally should be focusing on. And learning by watching is rather slow compared to actually doing something. So you should use this tool sparingly and not all the time. It shouldn't be the only tool that you use. So when is it still useful? When is the clicker still useful? No, it is. It's very useful if you want to set a bar for something new that you introduce, for example. So in my department, I introduced weekly operational review meetings. And this really depends on the chair of the meeting being strong, asking good questions, digging deep, identifying good action items. And to make sure that our one was successful, I did the first 3 sessions myself or 4. But then I can't carry the ROM on my own. So then I handed it over to the senior engineers who then had a bar of what was expected to them and how it works well. And if I give them now feedback, they have this reference. I actually still occasionally act as chair to keep that bar up, right? Mentoring. We heard about this as well already. Here, you don't do anything. It's in a certain sense the opposite of leading by example. It's driven by your mentee, right? But since it's driven by your mentee, you don't control the topics. You don't control if they applied, when, how, and what the outcome is. So it's not about helping you solve a problem. It's about paying it forward, which also means you can do mentoring in your team or department, but don't expect it to solve an immediate problem you have, right? Mentoring is a much longer scale thing. But what's so great about mentoring is there are two things. One is you can extend your influence far into the company in areas that you would normally not reach. So I'm working currently at Zalando on delivery options, and I influence how tech designs are written in the size and fit department, completely separate. And as a fringe benefit, I actually get contacts that I can use to ask questions on some data engineering things that actually affect the Team 9 department. So that's a good side effect, but not the main thing. It's about growth of your mentee. The second good thing is you can support it for people at a disadvantage. We had this reference to the gender share here in the room. So women in tech, especially in leadership, still are in minority, and thus, for example, they suffer similarity bias, right? Men hire men, this kind of thing. And here mentoring can be a very powerful support tool, but it applies to other people at disadvantage. I'm working part-time, for example, for to have time for my kids. That's also a disadvantage where you can help. Okay, delegating. We heard this as well today. There's going to be talk about this, but the other thing in the next session about delegating as an individual contributor, how that works, you should absolutely check this out. But here I don't want to talk about it as a tool to share your work, but it's about a tool for growth of your colleagues. What's special there then is not everything you delegate is a growth opportunity, right? The task has to be challenging, but it still has to be within the reach of your colleague, meaning they can deliver a good outcome with only limited support. Back to my daughters again. If they ask them to empty the dishwasher, that's not a growth opportunity. It used to be 4 years ago, but it's not anymore. If they ask them to pack their clothes for a weekend camping trip, that's a challenge, but they can actually do it if they get them to do it, right? So now, if I delegate one of these tasks, which one would I delegate being the more experienced person? It would not be the harder one, it would be the easier one, because they only grow from the harder one, right? So that's something to be aware of. So I know your colleagues aren't kids, I'm not suggesting they are, but trust me, these examples, they do transfer. But here it's absolutely critical that you know your colleagues, because the tasks that you split off your work have to match the skills of the colleagues. So you need to know actually whom you're going to delegate them to and what's a good growth opportunity here, so that you maximize growth, but you don't actually risk the project to which they contribute. Okay? Final and fourth tool is teaching. This is my favorite tool. It's a lot of fun applying it. It's combining mentoring and delegating. Sometimes it's called coaching. I prefer teaching a bit, but you know, what matters is what you do. Here, your colleague, again, does all the work, but as opposed to delegation, you participate in the entire process, right? So you don't just review the final result. No. When the task is started, you consult on how to approach it. You advise on different aspects of it. You share your techniques, and this is the most important thing. You explain your techniques and why they work, how they work, what the limitations are. So we heard a lot about sharing knowledge, but there's a lot about sharing skills and sharing techniques and how you approach these things. That's equally, if not more important. And that's not something that can be done by writing a, design guideline or recommendation. This requires a close interaction with your peers. This is a massive growth opportunity because these abstract ideas are applied directly, right? And that's kind of the difference to mentoring. But in difference to delegating, you can use it for extremely challenging work that normally is outside of the reach because you're there from the beginning, and if anything gets off track a bit, you can actually correct. So you can use it for very complex tasks, but you need colleagues who are eager to learn and who can work with this feedback and advice and this back and forth very well, right? Not all your colleagues will like that. Think about yourself, how well you receive critical feedback for a thing, how much you like to be guided. You will know that, it depends on your colleague again here. So now I want to close with a third example from my daughters. That's a true story. My daughter wants to put up a lamp in her room. Mentoring would mean, I generally talk to her about drilling and how electrical wiring works, and then she does it and I don't care much. That would not have worked. Delegating would mean, here's the drill, go get going, I'll check how it worked out tomorrow. Not a good option either. Teaching means we actually do it together, right? But she does all the steps. She drilled the holes, she screwed the screws, she connected the wiring. I didn't touch any of that, like literally. But I, of course, explained to her how to best drill holes, what to be aware of, where the risks are, and what these 3 wires in the walls actually do, and how this all works. And I was there to interfere, in case things got off track. So it's extremely powerful learning opportunity. And now, if she moves out, let's say in 10 years, and she has her own apartment, guess who does not have to put up lamps, right? It's me. And that is it. That is scaling yourself by helping colleagues grow. The impact is huge over a longer time horizon. Here I have a 10-year payoff period, right? It's pretty long, but in business you can have it shorter. So elevating the skill level in the company is really the most impactful thing you can do. You have to consciously choose the tools based on the people you work with and the opportunities you can create. And as a staff engineer, you need to create these opportunities, right? They don't just come along, you have to actively create them. And over time, this frees capacity for you to move on from your original challenges to bigger tasks that are growth opportunities for you. And if you're lucky, a colleague of yours follows the advice I just gave in this talk and actually teaches you how to catch these bigger fish. Thank you very much, and see you at the office hours.